one of you to find your car in your business, then that's victory. On that note, let's get into it. In 1916, my great-grandfather, flying a single-speed biplane just like this one, fell out of the sky. Flying beyond design limits, pops, fuel pipes, and froze. Free-falling some 200, 300 feet in a tailspin. By some miracle, Pop landed on a chicken coop on a haystack and lived to tell the tale. He lived to tell the engineers of the fatal design flaw, the frozen pipes. And the engineers, motivated by the fear of death, of future pilots, innovated like lives depended on it. Because they did. They didn't tell the pilots, don't fly beyond 10,000 feet. They engineered and innovated so that they could fly far beyond the horizon. Folks, in Australia, our retail sector, we are in an innovation nosedive. We're in our own tailspin. In our race to the bottom, we risk destroying value rather than creating it. Customers choose own brand, lower margin products over national brands. In the absence of meaningful differentiation, customers are choosing the one thing that they can see and control, which is price. Our industry growth is stagnating, with shrinking margins and cost reduction, the focus of FY26. It's not enough. It is one of the levers that we have to pull, but the way we pull out of this nosedive that we are in is that we innovate like our lives depend on it. Because the livelihoods of all of those that work in our sector, they do depend on it. So I ask myself, the ideas I put forward in my paper, why don't they stick? Why aren't they already in place in Australia? I believe we have our motivation equation wrong. That is, innovation needs motivation to be right. We are in a nosedive where we are today, and I define our motivation equation as the reward outweighing the risk. That is both on a personal basis as well as a business basis. The reward must outweigh the risk, or we won't be motivated and inspired to put forward disruptive innovation. To address this equation, and you can see the engineer in there, improve motivation by either dialing up the reward side of the equation or dropping the risk. Simple. Surface ideas reward disruptors, and execution cannot be unfairly punished. I have 3 simple tools that you can take forward in your businesses. The first on increasing the reward, and the latter 2 on dropping the risk. So let's start with the reward. The Cheeto, late 80s, early 90s in the United States, a pantry staple in every child's lunchbox, in every household, except for the Hispanic community. The innovation in product, the flaming hot Cheeto, so spicy that it hurts good. That product captured the hearts, minds, and wallets of 20 million Hispanic customers. Massive innovation, multicultural marketing, first of its kind in the snacking category in the late 80s, early 90s. And so where did that innovation come from? It wasn't from a room like this. It wasn't from global retail trends and data. It wasn't even from product innovation teams. No, it was from a man named Richard Montañez, who was a janitor on a line at one of the plants. Richard saw that the products that he created, or played part in creating every day, didn't resonate with him, with his family, with his community. And being so dissatisfied with that, he pitched. He pitched through the regular channels, through a superintendent, and failed. And so he stole away the CEO's phone number, made a call to the top, broke all the rules, and with executive sponsorship and an idea from the right guy, the industry changed. Innovation is the art of meeting the customer's unmet needs, and there is no monopoly on that art. taking a different spin, Amazon and Instacart. Deep technical capability, asking the question of, could a customer do their entire shop without speaking to a single person or scanning a single product? Innovation, more often than not, doesn't come from the traditional channel. It comes from someone with a passion, with an idea, who's one of our end customers, or from deep technical capability and expertise, asking what can be done, not necessarily what the customer looking for. So let's make it real. Tool number one. Surface the ideas, reward the disruptor. Hire the dreamer, first step. A proportion of our workforce must be disruptive thinkers. Consider Google's hiring process, where they test for googliness, which is an ability to think different, to be creative. To make it very simple, in your next interview, ask, what is your big idea if you join our business? At best, you'll find those disruptive thinkers. And at worst, you'll have a pipeline of ideas that you can feed into your funnel. Find the ideas. Step 2. Incubators, hackathons, genuine opportunities to test the ideas, and visible leadership of when these ideas succeed, but especially when they fail. Stuart Matcham, M&S, straight to Stu. 35,000 ideas submitted in just 3 years, with a direct line of contact from anybody in the business straight into the top. It doesn't take a lot of infrastructure to create these channels where our teams can share those ideas. Give people a microphone. Incentivize innovation. It's yellow. In the audience, incentives, exciting. Innovation, growth targets, scorecards, right? If we talk really, really honestly, our executive scorecards, we do have sales growth, right? Well, most of us are assume. But what we don't have is innovation growth targets or disruptive growth targets. To put the financial spin on it, 2 to 3% is all it would take of an innovation budget to be dedicated towards disruptive growth ideas. Chief Transformation Officers often share, having spoken with the Chief Transformation Officer of ANZ, they will share the business group growth targets, but they will also have a disruptive growth, something that is separate. But to take it away from us as leaders in the business and to think more about the cars and the people on the ground, incentive can be recognition and a chance to be in the driver's seat. I worked with an engineer, software engineer this time, Tony from Latitude Financial Services. Latitude had a unique pitch Shark Tank kind of arena where on the business case for your idea, you could write your own name as a required resource for execution. Tony for years had an idea to drop 2 steps from inbound calls to the collections department. In just 2 weeks, writing a case with him, his idea was endorsed. He was resourced on the project. And he saw his idea come to life. But not just that, that was his golden ticket. Out of the mundane, out of the everyday. We gave Tony a chance to be the hero. And when we give people the chance to be the hero, sometimes they'll put on the cape. So we have this myriad of ideas. We've filled our ideas pipeline, but ultimately in business, it comes down to the business case. Right? So we can't move forward without addressing the risk side of the equation. Woolworths, South Africa. Market leaders in product innovation in food and apparel. Knowledge partnerships across the globe, and they have an exceptionally high success rate on their innovation. 80% of products still on shelf 12 months after launch. Exceptional. Their secret sauce? Shared investment. Manufacturers and A brands in South Africa want to work and want to invest in Woolworths South Africa. Put simply, once you're in, you're in. So our second tool, manufacturers cannot own all of the risk. We must share the risk as retailers and manufacturers together. Woolworths South Africa, in particular, on the first 2 of these 4 options, have really succeeded. Exclusive innovation partnerships, guaranteed distribution points, when Rhodes, a key supplier of Woolworths South Africa, has 20 products on the shelf, innovative new lines. 16 succeed, 4 flop. Those 4 spaces, they aren't re-tendered. It's a revolving door on the innovation pipeline of Rhodes. Guaranteed distribution points for Rhodes means they can have 20, 30 products in the wings waiting. To bring the scale down to small, medium-sized businesses, 20 distribution points is enough for a small business with a 2-year guarantee to get their business loan, to spin up a loan. Retailers, ask your suppliers what matters. What's the scale? Manufacturers, agitate and influence at the right levels. As goes across all of these will not be achieved during a range review between the Arnott's account manager and the Coles category manager. Separate your strategic innovation pipeline from your day-to-day commercial negotiations. The second piece here, longer supply agreements. To put it simply, in Australia, we have a fantastic reputation for the 12-month supply agreement. Manufacturers, demonstrate the value that the longer agreement can bring in your commercial negotiations. And retailers, change your DOAs. Be bold. Give your category managers the chance to think longer than their annual tenders. And so to round us out, the last 2 do require a checkbook and some degree of investment. Though ironically, the checkbook due to innovation is not the right concept. But the innovation investment funds and grants can be smaller. They don't have to be large scale like the Woolworths Growth Funds for organic suppliers. Hackathons. It is incredible what can be done to transform, say, a digital experience with a $30,000 prize on motivated young students. Shared capital investments. Well, this is where we do start paying some money. And to give credit to Coles, the Jewel of India acquisition, aligning incentives directly between manufacturer and retailer, has propelled many in the ready meal segment. Not surprising that a week ago or so, Woolworths announced their 100% share, went through on the kitchen as well. Tool number 2, manufacturers can't own all the risk, we must share. But if we think very differently now, and I would not be a successful engineer if I didn't go to the root cause, which is dropping the risk is best achieved by dropping the cost. Because if we share a large risk, it's still half. Albert Heijn, market leaders in the Netherlands, globally recognized, like Woolworths South Africa, as innovators in product and format. Their unique proposition, 80% of products fail on the shelf. 20% last the 12 months. And so the question is why? Why do they succeed? And why do suppliers and manufacturers and brands want to be in those shelves? The answer, delisting of a product, not a business. Delisting doesn't feel like a failure. As an example, Albert Heijn tests in-store pineapple coring and slicing in just 1 week. I imagine most of you have gone into a shop, pressed a button, got an orange juice squeezed directly in front of your eyes, yeah? Pineapple slicing and coring in-store. Fully contained, but at the end you get a small plastic container full of pineapple. Director of format from Albert Heijn gets a call from a supplier. And Passion says, hey, in neighboring Germany, we've been trying these pineapple slicing and coring machines. Can we give it a crack? His answer, yes, let's give it a go. With all the approvals in place, direct line to the Director of Sustainability, Health and Safety, as well as Quality. In 3 days, it arrives in store. The store manager, having a call from the Director of Format, feels like a champion. Yes, I found 2 meters squared in my store to try something different. The result? Fruit flies. Everywhere. Absolute disaster, impossible to execute and scale. But in 1 week, with no investment, Albert Heijn was able to test, trial, and make a kill decision on something that could otherwise have been incredibly expensive. How does the supplier feel after that? Is it their reputation as they did a launch that failed and they're actually failed innovation partners? No, Albert Heijn wants to work with them again. The store manager doesn't think about, oh, my lost KPI. They think, wow, I had a chance to actually test something. How fortunate am I? And your team in quality and technical, they signed off. and so they don't feel like they will leave behind. I've heard the challenges, and I understand. Innovation is scary because of the investment that goes behind it. Sunk costs, raw materials, and packaging write-offs alone can be enough to dissuade us from doing things differently. And on the retail side, well, our budgets are tight on capital for the year ahead. We can't afford the brand damage. Our teams are already at capacity, and one of the pieces that irks me always is we just don't do that kind of thing. But we're not set up for that. But the answer is the lean startup. The lean startup. So our third tool is the lean startup. Change your cost and timeline paradigm. Build fast. Test small. Learn quickly. Building fast, we talk about launching quickly in days, weeks, or months. Bare bones only. Take the fear of brand damage out of the equation by launching a white label. Take the risk of investment in packaging by sticking a sticker onto the top of the product. Testing small. Measure performance over 4 weeks and 4 stores. Remove unit cost from the conversation. When we talk 4 stores, 4-week trial, perhaps that's 160 units in totality. The total cost of spinning that up, the raw materials that go into it, becomes 2/5 of a rounding error. And finally, learn quickly. Make a decision, kill or scale. And when we do kill, celebrate. Be that visible leader who says, yes, we tried. It didn't cost a lot because we ran it through the right process. And we get to learn. Make people want to be the champion. Incentivize adoption of this process and remove that individual fear response of I was a part of failure to instead say I got to be a part of it. And so folks, you have 3 tools. The first tool, dial up the reward side of the equation. Hire the dreamer, give them a microphone, give them a chance to be a champ. The second and third are about dropping the risk. Retailers, we need to do better at sharing that risk. And manufacturers, you need to elevate that conversation to the right level in business. And ultimately, let's drop the cost. The lean startup, a simple concept that we can trial on our non-core business. The engineers who worked on Pop's biplane, they innovated like lives depended on it. Today, we take out our phones, we book a flight to anywhere in the world. I wonder just how far we can go as Australian retail if we innovate like our lives depend on it. You here, you're all pilots. Your hands are on the stick. My question to you, where are you taking us? Where to? Where to next?
Thanks, James. We'll move to the second phase, which is questions on your paper.
Thank you.
Hi, James. I'm Dave.
Hi, Dave.
I work for a healthcare company. We've got 17 brands. We innovate on average, for the last 3 years, on average 130 SKUs a year. Based on the Albert Mind percentage, that means I'm staring close to the row of about 90 SKUs that fail inside of a 2-year time horizon. What would you say to my owner who's obsessed with innovation? What we should do next?
So to play that back, healthcare, 19 brands, call it 180 SKUs a year that we are innovating on and launching. The answer there is to keep your core strong. In healthcare and pharmaceuticals, the lead times can be much longer. I think of the innovation of Korean healthcare and skincare brands, which have been brought in through P&G in Australia. We can test by rebranding existing products that don't exist already in the Australian market. I would say that that's the answer here, is rather than disrupting your existing innovation process, which is probably really successful, right? Seeking really high likelihood of success with that upfront investment. Instead, think around what are the pieces that can be brought from offshore. We can repackage, rebrand, test in the market, and if we do see that customer resonance, then we can make that investment. It's not to throw out the entire development of your business. Albert Heijn, while they do have this 80% failure rate in their innovation pipeline, they also make 20-year investments with their apple growers and have unique apple variants. So when you go into their shops, you can have an apple that doesn't taste like anything else in Europe. So I'd say it's balanced, but in your business's case, be 90% on the core and 10% on the rest. Thank you for the question.
Hi James, Tony here.
Tony, hi.
Nice to meet you. Well done today. I've got a question, and it's a bit of a different take on that old saying, one person's treasure is another person's trash. It's the other way around. So when you've got, you've presented, you've got it on the shelf, you're going well with that particular category manager, you're lining things up for the future, and there's a change of category manager. What's your take on having personal beliefs and somebody seeing it was once a treasure of this other buyer, and now you've got this new buyer that thinks it's trash? How do you get around that scenario?
Well, first off, that's a visceral feeling, right? Which is to have that commitment to perhaps to make it personal, that Woolworths have the Woolworths signature, and then 2 years later, when the category manager changes to change direction, I can feel that. Right? The answer, well, perhaps overly simplistic, is to elevate the conversation to those who don't have the 12-month tenure. Merchandise managers or heads of business. If we're talking innovation agreements or set 3 to 5 year category plans with strategic partnerships, you chose a retailer to hitch your wagon to, so to speak. At that more elevated level, that signature perhaps holds more weight, but you also have the tenure, which tends to stay there. So more folks in the room for those big agreements, but at a more senior level. And Tony, for your business, it wouldn't be your account manager who goes in the back. It would be your CEO or your chief commercial officer. But it's a very real example. It's a very felt example. And I would say that is the way that you can address it. Thank you.
Hey James, Rowan from Simplot. Well done. Great presentation.
Cheers.
Just in regards to failed innovation, we always apply a cost to that. We see that in negative. I'm interested in your view on what is the upside of innovation and failure, particularly in regards to organisational learning and agility.
Oh, I love that question. That's fantastic. My take to start there, and then I'll give you an example, which I really believe in, is it's a bit of a butterfly effect. If I stood up here today and I spun some crazy yarn about an idea that I had and look, it just didn't work, but the response in the room is that Bernie said, hey, that was really interesting and brilliant and would never work. Then the folks that in the room, they don't just hear that that wouldn't work. They hear that that was brilliant, that the individual is celebrated for putting forward that idea. The example which comes to mind is from a group of folks who are particularly skeptical about new ideas, which is port operations folks. I worked at a mine in Whyalla in South Australia, and we were struggling to find ways to load the ships more quickly. Nobody wanted to put an idea forward because there was this culture and fear that if they put forward something that was stupid, that might come back to their boss. It took the director of that port to come in and say, why if we just put a vessel out in the harbour permanently and run tubes back and forward to it? Absolutely ridiculous idea. The government would never get behind it, and it's extremely expensive. But it was that butterfly effect of someone in a leadership position putting forward perhaps what they know is a ridiculous idea. And it inspires others to put forward. And it might not be the first, second, third, or fourth idea, it could be the 65th. But that would never have come to light if we didn't have that culture shift of it's a learning, and we embrace that. We don't invest in the idea and do it and see it fail, but we let it come to pass and let it be spoken and shared. Thank you.
Hi James, Jennifer from 6 Degrees. Well done, I really enjoyed your presentation. My question comes from a talent perspective, and in your view, what do you see as the most sought after skill set required in innovation and NPD teams now that we should be really trying to retain and develop?
What is the most sought after skill set in innovation and NPD teams now that we're trying to really build into that space? Yeah. I'll go with my gut here, which is resilience. Resilience. Our especially creative folk, but anybody that puts their heart behind something and sees it not resonate, that hurts, right? And that resilience and that buoyancy to not take, you have to take it personally, because if you don't care, and business is personal. But to be able to bounce back and to keep on pushing, keep on trying. The reality is there's very few businesses that have this true innovation is learning and failure is learning culture. So I think